Sorry about that.
turned. I want to know why you think that that's real and what you think is going on in those stories.
Well, first you've got the dialogue itself, which is cool wisdom for all people.
Yeah, and some of it is like hyper bizarre, like what Oppenheimer quoted at the detonation of the atomic bomb.
Right.
I am become death,
Kalo
destroyer
Shmi
of worlds.
Lokshaya Krit Pravido.
Is that
Time, that's the Sanskrit.
How does he say it?
Kalo Shmi Lokshaya Krit Pravido.
Is that why?
Time I am the destroyer. Time I am the great destroyer, and I've come to destroy all worlds. So that's one.
That's the actual translation.
That's the actual translation in English.
Because his translation, Oppenheimer's, was "I am become death." Is that because of an issue with the translation between Hindu and
there's
English?
It's just different people translate it, slightly different, but it's similar. Meaning, in that particular section that you pulled out, that was Krishna explaining like God is beautiful, God is charming, God is your best friend. He's also death personified. So he's saying in that particular place, I'm actually also the destroyer of all the worlds. When we think of the yogis explain that God is everything, both the beauty and the destruction as well. And so Krishna just is sharing his attributes, and in that particular chapter 11, the Muslim was intimidating.
Where do you think all these stories come from? What do you think the origin of the Bhagavad Gita, of the Mahabharata, of all the ancient texts? What do you think the origin was? What was the motivation to put this stuff down? What was the original concepts that led them to write this, and where did it all come from? There has to be an origin of these wisdoms, right?
Yeah.
What do you think that is?
To even answer the question, I have to take myself out of Raghu and just answer like a yoga teacher.
Okay.
Because to answer of what do you think, it's one thing you're sort of trained not to do as far as what is your personal opinion. Mm-hmm. I can give you my personal opinion, but I have to separate it from what the stories themselves say.
Well, give me your personal opinion.
My personal opinion is I hear what the stories have to offer. I find some value in the stories, and I try to apply wisdom to my life. It helps the direction of my life. It helps me escape potholes.
I understand.
The stories themselves say these are all real. They're way beyond your perception. They were orally transmitted. At a certain time historically, they understood people are getting dumber. See, we have a tendency to think we're at the pinnacle of evolution, but the Vedic teachings is that as we go on in this age, we get more and more disconnected. There was a time where architecture was more evolved, where the sciences were more evolved.
Wait a minute, stop. The sciences were more evolved?
The sciences, like for example, the building of these vimanas, which when we read them now, we just think that's mythological. Mm-hmm. Even weaponry. Weaponry, they say, were done with sound. If you study, there's one book called the Dharma.
But do you think this is real?
Do I think it's real? I think it could be. I don't think it's definite. I definitely don't know.
So you think at one point in time, human beings had vimanas and they flew around the sky, and then they had weapons that used sound?
Could. Why not?
Was no evidence, archaeological evidence, that there was a flying craft, or that there was ever any technology that allowed people to leave gravity.
Yeah. Sometimes there may not be evidence. Just like there's.
Right.
Let me show you. What was the guy's name? Hill?
Barney Hill.
What's your evidence? You could just say, well, it's my own experience.
Well, I mean, he's just that's a totally different thing. He's just relaying his personal experience. He could have had some sort of a psychotic break. He could have had, there could have been mass psychosis with him and with two people. Group psychosis with him and his wife.
I can say that there are things that make no sense to me, yet I sort of tried them anyway, and then after time, they made sense. Like, well, wait a second, that does make sense. Or at different vantage points of my life, it didn't make sense when I was 20, but at 50, that makes a lot of sense. So there's certain things that are huge leaps of faith that I can't say, I definitely know that to be true. Just like chanting on mantras. It made no sense. Made no real sense. But over time, I realized actually that helps in this particular way.
But it achieves a state of consciousness. We've known that forever, that meditation in general achieves certain states of consciousness, and you can actually, with fMRI, you can actually monitor the changes in the way the brain is.
See, this is what I like about you. You're one of those guys, you get into these very interesting, like, subtle sciences, and then you find like hard evidence for these things. And just hearing that thing with James Wilk and breaking all these things down, I'm more of a simpler guy. I find people where I trust the way they live, and they've applied stuff and walked it's more like I can tell time, but I don't know how to take apart a clock and put it back together.
No, I think exactly the same way. I'm fascinated by watches.
Yeah.
But then you see all the gears behind a watch, like a self-winding watch, and you're like, I don't know what the fuck is happening here. I'm sure I can find it out eventually.
I'm like that with a lot of things, and I'm always impressed when you dig into it with people like this. But truthfully, if you want to know the honest truth, I was like, oh man, I hope Joe doesn't dig into it, maybe because I'm not that kind of hard science guy. There's people like even all the stuff I did in yoga. I'm concerned with you as a human being. That's why I asked you very specifically. What do you think? Right. Well, I can say like the stuff that you liked about me fighting was endurance, flexibility. I give all the credit to yoga.
You did at the time
pranayama.
I've told many people that you had crazy cardio. And your cardio was, you never did cardio. You just did breathing exercises.
Never did cardio. Just sat down.
You always had great cardio. You always led like really good endurance.
And my cardio was even better. I remember being at the bomb squad once on day 17 of a 21-day fast.
Wow.
Day 17. And I remember fighting, I can't remember his name, this cool guy. He's like, what? And you know how jiu-jitsu class ends when we're all tanked and we're all like, and I just kept on going. And he's like, man, what is up with you? I was like, I don't know. I haven't eaten solid food in 17 days. So it's not like I'm a genius. It's just that these are sort of like yoga, fasting, deep breathing. I've just been doing them. Yeah. And I'm sure there's people that can give you a modern take on what the benefits are. And
but that's not what I'm asking you. What I'm asking is why you believe the Bhagavad Gita is real.
Sure. So my point is there's reasonable amounts of faith in these other things that I've applied that have made me take a next step. So whether I believe it's real, I just believe the truths I can extract from it are real. Yes. Whether the war actually happened, there's a leap of faith.
The benefits of those of following those scriptures you apply, and you feel those benefits. So that's enough.
That's enough to make me move forward towards this. Just for example, the idea of faith. And because especially in America, we don't like the concept of blind faith. But if I saw you walking in downtown let's take it the other way. You saw me, you're driving your Porsche, and you saw me walking in Manhattan. And you say, hey, Raghu, how do you get to Times Square? And I said, so the first step is I could lie to you. People lie all the time when you ask them for directions. But you have some reasonable faith. I know him. He's a friend. Why would he give me bad directions? So there's a reasonable amount of faith. But even still, people get into their egos and they just want to be the knower of directions. But I say you go up to 14th Street and you're going to see a McDonald's, you take a right. Then you're going to go down all the way to whatever, I can't remember Manhattan anymore. Union Square and take a left and go up 3rd. And then at Union Square, you're going to see a park. At that park, you take a hard left. So, again, you have some type of extended faith towards me, not blind faith, but you go up to 14th Street and there's that McDonald's. As you go to McDonald's or that next signpost, you realize, okay, maybe he does know where he's going. Then you go farther, there's Union Square. Okay, I think he actually knows what's going on. And all of a sudden you see the Times Square in the distance. So faith isn't just like, I believe. And if anyone was to say, I believe this, I believe in these Vimanas, I believe in mantras, I'd start to question them. But it happens with small degrees of things being just shown to you that you want to take. All right, what's the next step here? What do they say about this? What do they say about that? And then you apply it and see, well, does that work with me? And so, like I said, sometimes things didn't make sense. I remember when I first met monks, and they said, question about, or not even monks, but people who were just like following very strict with their sexuality, even in family. And the guy said, I don't have sex. I was 17. And I was like, you don't have sex with your wife? Are you crazy? I was like, no, we do other things. And I just couldn't understand that as a 17-year-old boy or 18-year-old boy. I couldn't understand, why would you be with a person if not for that?
What was their answer?
It was because they said we're practicing detachment. We're practicing going internal to find our pleasure. And I said, what do you do for fun? And he goes, you go for a drive. I was like, you go for a drive? Are you crazy? But it was where this person was on his path of really controlling the senses and finding his pleasure internally. At time in my life, it made no sense whatsoever.
Maybe he really didn't like having sex with
maybe,
his wife.
Or
and was
that,
looking for
or
some
that.
sort of an excuse.
Or maybe there was...
We're going internal, baby. She's like, what? What's happening?
Maybe there was trauma. We don't know the whole story. Anyway,
I see what you're saying, though. That applying this stuff, whether or not you break it down scientifically and objectively and try to analyze each and every word and whatever the translation is, you could actually apply those truths, air quotes, to your life and have real benefits.
Yeah. And other things are just, does it make a difference if Vimanas exist or not? No, it makes no difference in my practical life. Could they exist? Sure. It could, all these, it could answer a lot. I think a lot of these things we talk about, like life on other planets and aliens, they all are very much explained. Or here's another good one. What do these spiritual paths have in common? We train ourselves to find the differences in all of them. And the Vedic teachings say, don't you understand? You should be able to walk into a mosque, into a church, into a synagogue and say, how nice, these people are trying to connect. Not that we got to win these people over to our team.
Right.
Because they're all an illusion and they're all going to hell forever.
Right.
Everyone's on a type of path, and I appreciate them trying to surrender. And the only thing that's going to get in their way, because people say things like this all the time, it's religion that caused all the problems in this world. And it's not religion, it's the ego that goes with joining a particular church, synagogue, ashram, etc., that we have it our way. And everybody else, they're a problem, and we got to fix it. That's what gets in the way. Because you could say materialism causes lots of problems as well in the world. So I don't think the ego's sneaky. It'll sneak into your diet. It'll sneak into your God. It'll sneak in. And that's why there's an appreciation instead of a condemnation of people that are different than us.